welcome to Yield Today. I'm here with the one and only Nick Reis. He is currently a team lead at Kent, and I got to work with him a lot. He's a really good guy, but he also does a lot of other things. He has some great perspectives on self-development and productivity and self-care. So thanks for hopping on, Nick.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, you totally gave me some advice to help the podcast grow and with putting transitions and stuff, and I still do that. So you've been a good supporter for sure.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. So let's kind of dive into Nick back in the day, Nick. Let's go there. And what were some of the things he wanted to do with his life? Maybe around 15, 16.
15, 16. Wanted to be a zookeeper.
Okay. let's go into that.
Not even kidding. Let's see. I think starting in elementary school, all the way through almost the end of high school, I wanted to be a zookeeper. Just loved zoo animals. In the end, realized there's not much of a demand for zookeepers, so I had other interests. Mm-hmm. So I kind of felt out those other interests and found out that's where more of my passion was. So, yeah.
So did you go to the zoo a lot as a kid?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I went to the zoo my family would go at least once a year, but usually more often than that even. And even now, every time I go on vacation or anything like that, still going to the zoo. Yeah, gotta hit a zoo. So.
Do you have a favorite animal then?
Probably a penguin. Nobody walks like
really?
Penguins.
So I've been writing in a gratitude journal thingy in the morning, and that's what I wrote for today. I'm thankful for penguins. They're cute, cuddly, and daring.
Nice.
That's what I wrote. Yeah.
And they totally have a monopoly on their mode of transport. No one else waddles. So.
That's true. That's true.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
Sweet. So you went from Zookeeper to trying out some other stuff. Did you do some fast food or anything like that?
I definitely worked in fast food. Worked at Jimmy John's for a while. Then when I came to college, for the first 2 years actually, I was studying computer science. Found out that I really don't like coding after 2 years, so switched over to marketing. Yep.
There we go. Yeah, I've done a little bit of coding myself. Definitely not my favorite thing. I love and I'm fascinated by when things work, but sometimes it's just it takes a lot of time. I feel it's something you really have to kind of devote a lot of time and attention to get good at.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it for the first 2 or 3 semesters. I really enjoyed it. I'm fascinated by it. It's just like you said, the level of time commitment and the very, very. You have to write it a very, very specific way, and that's what got me.
Yeah, it's if there's one little tiny thing wrong.
I remember there was one project where it was 3,000, 5,000 lines of code or something like that, and I'd misplaced one semicolon, and
that was it.
That was it. That was when I was determined that I was gonna find something else. But yeah, it was a lot. I think I learned a lot from those experiences. So
yeah, it's so neat because there's some fields that demand that kind of precision, and then there's other ones where it can be a little bit more open and free. So it's interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
So I know you served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm sure you learned a lot of self-discipline, grit, and things out there. You were in Utah?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yep. I served northern Utah, starting in the Ogden mission, and then I moved over to the Layton mission when they created that. I learned a lot about grit, perseverance, and also humility on the mission. I think that's something that I've learned even more at my time at Kent. Just if you're not humble, if you don't have humility, you're going to be blessed with it. So I've learned a lot about humility, but also just grit, drive, that kind of thing. So
that's interesting. So how is what you learned there of the grit and the drive? How's that helped you in sales at
Progression. Yeah.
Progression. Okay.
Yeah.
And Stukin.
Yeah. I think. So as far as sales go, it's a very high demanding job. Like it demands a lot out of you. You've got to have the perseverance. You've got to have the grit. You like if you stop in sales, it's hard to get going again. And so I think I've learned a lot about that there, and I've applied that there. It's the same as on the mission. If if you're not diligent in your efforts, it's going to be harder to be diligent later on, right? We all know about missionaries that have a hard time being diligent, and it's really hard to get back into the headspace where they want to be, right? Even if you want to be diligent, if you haven't been in the past, it's just really hard to get in that headspace. So I think it's the same in sales. When you take a day off, when you like slow down a little bit, that kind of thing, it just makes it harder to catch back up the next day.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting too, and this is something I've definitely struggled with the podcast is like you cannot like tell yourself I'm gonna just do this way better and just become a superstar the next day. Like I'm gonna be the best ever. You really need to prove that to yourself slowly.
Yeah.
And it's like there's this refining and molding process, and you're making little little cuts here just to take off some of the parts, and it's a slow process. But
it's overnight success, years in the making.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody talks about the years that went into making that overnight success happen, or the success that everyone sees you having happen. It's a lot of hard work and consistency that goes into that.
Yeah, I think this is super cool too, because like what you learned at Jimmy John's and what you learned on your mission and what you learned like sort of working towards being a zookeeper, all that has helped you to get to where you are now.
Yep. I think that's absolutely true. I think a lot of the gifts that I have now are because of gifts that I got before that I just magnified.
Okay, well, yeah, we need to go into that a little bit more.
Okay, yeah. For example, let's see. I've always been blessed with a really, really good work ethic. I hate just sitting around. It drives me bonkers. And so with that, I've taken the time. I've been able to use that to learn a lot of other skills. When I'm sitting down watching TV, I can only tolerate it for so long before I pull up my computer or grab a book and start reading. And that's how I got into social media marketing, and that's how I got into that's how I learned a lot about sales, is I would read sales books or things like that. Like when we take the gifts and the talents that we have, and we work to grow those, that's when we're really going to see that consistency start to develop.
I think this is one of the saddest things that happens in life is somebody gets to like day 50 or year 5 at working at something, but they don't realize that they can still work on it more and improve it. They just kind of get to that point of like, this is okay, I'm good with where I'm at.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's too many people in the world that are satisfied with what they've done, and they just continue to do that over and over again, right? I don't ever want to become satisfied with where I'm at. I want to keep continuing to grow, continuing to learn, just advancing. I find it incredibly fulfilling, and it brings me a lot of happiness just to, at the end of the day, think about everything I've accomplished. So
That's good. I know when I was working at Stukin with you, I was pretty impressed of all the things you were doing, of just working full time and doing this podcast producing thing and doing a social media marketing business. Kind of, what are some of the things that help you to keep that train going?
Yeah. So, if I understand the question right, like what makes it so that I don't burn out? Is that what you're asking?
More or less, yeah.
Yeah. There's a few things. I have my goals for where I want to be in the future, and I know what I need to do to get there. And so I know, for example, like sales. Like I had networked with quite a few people in the marketing industry, and they told me if you can get some experience doing sales, that's gonna look really, really good. And so I was like, ding, like I'm getting a sales job. And then I talked to some other people, and they said, hey, if you could figure out like how to create content and edit things and things like that, being like I'm going to produce a podcast. Oh, if you could just get any experience marketing you can, I'm going to go up to businesses and I'm going to ask them if I can run their social media. Like, I have my goals, and I have a network of people that I've developed that are willing to help me out with advice. And so, because I want to achieve the goals that I have so much, because I've thought about them and I've dreamed about them and things like that, it really makes me want to follow through on the things that are going to get me there.
I think this is really important, and it's been talked about in some books. I think Russell Brunson talks about like having your dream 100, your people that you work with to help you get to where you need to be. And I think sometimes I'm guilty of this, is I'll ask for help for different things from pretty much anybody instead of like the people who are actually doing it and actually know exactly where I want to be.
Yeah, I think we're all guilty of that, right? But I don't think that's a bad thing, though. Like, it's good to have a support system and people to give you advice and things like that that genuinely care about you, even if they aren't, doing what you want to do, right? It's always good to have that support system. I just think it's also important, if you have goals, to have a separate support system for developing those goals.
I feel like I'm getting coached a little bit right now. Have you ever had and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. You have a lot of really good thoughts and insights, and you were a really awesome team lead and helped me a lot when I was at Stuken. So
I'm glad.
Yeah. Has there been any like coaches or people that you look up to or that have helped you a lot to get to where you're at?
Oh yeah. I guess a lot of the people in my network, I've hopped on phone calls with them just to ask them questions about the industry. I've had emails back and forth asking for advice. What should I do next? What book should I read? That kind of thing. They've helped me a lot. I think another example of people that I look up to that have coached me are just like, the people that are writing the books that I read, right? Mm-hmm. There's one in particular that always, like, I listen to his podcast too. His name is Bedros Keuilian. He owns Fit Body Bootcamp. He started that big franchise company, and he owns a lot of other companies as well. But just like, even those people that we may not know personally, like, they can be our role models, and they can coach us as well if we put in the effort to, try and learn from them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true, because like their books are literally like their mind. Like, you're literally like getting inside their mind and getting to look around and see what it's like. So you could ask yourself, like I do this with the scriptures, like what should I do to improve this situation? There's generally a scripture about it. Same thing with like that guy whose name I can't pronounce. You could probably open up the book and be like, what would he do to improve this and make this work better?
Yeah. Yep. He's one of the ones that, like, whenever I want to like slow down, like I'll take breaks and things like that, but like whenever I'm like feeling a lack of motivation, I look at him and he's like my motivation, or he's my example of motivation. So yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things, is to be able to distinguish the play time from the work time, and just respecting both.
Yeah, exactly. I think there are oftentimes two camps of people. There's the people that are always working, and they're really, really good at what they do, but they're always working. And then oftentimes we see another camp of people that are always playing, right? And I think it's important to keep that balance there.
Yeah.
I don't think we should always be focused on our work. I don't think we should always be focused on our play, because we do need those breaks, and sometimes we tend to forget that. So. Yeah,
I completely agree. What are some of your goals kind of moving forward in college, and I guess kind of open the curtains a little bit to help us see the beautiful Nick horizon that you look at every day that none of us else, we see like the developing fruit, but you have this amazing.
Yeah. Ultimately, I'd love to go on to own my own marketing agency. I have plans for, like, I have other business ideas as well, but that's where I want to start. Before that, I kind of want to get some experience, like, within marketing, like some more experience, I guess. And so I'd love to go on to become a brand manager. that's kind of my big goal as far as like established career right now. So yeah.
That sounds good. I mean, there's a lot of people at our school right now getting recruited for different things, and you do well at that spot, then you're pretty much guaranteed to stay in that spot, so you can learn more as you continue to move forward.
Yeah. Yep. Digital marketing, brand manager. Like, I've got quite a few goals. It's just a matter of making them all happen, or making a lot of them happen, because I know I can't do everything I want to do, but working towards as many of them that are of a similar alignment. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I've heard it likened to like a skill tree in like video games. Like
Yep.
if you go towards like writing and you just work on writing a lot, then you can do, blogging and other things.
Yep.
But if you kind of go all the way out here with like, I don't know, sewing, like there's a limit to like kind of what you can do from there. I mean, obviously you learn different stuff, but yeah, it helps if you're using those skill points right. If we think of each year as like a skill point.
Yep. Yeah, that's kind of why I've been working on like some of the side hustle things that I'm doing. I'm doing the podcast so that I can learn some of the content development side of things. I'm doing the social media marketing so that I can learn some of the like, the current trends in social media and ideas for developing strategies and that kind of thing. But I think with all the things that I've got going on, I've allowed myself a window of opportunity. So, yeah.
That's good. What have been like some of the like biggest gems? Like this is something I love about Nick. This is something that like we need to keep this gem as bright as possible and keep doing this, make this part of the Nick Reis treasury.
I don't know. I think one of the things that I have a hard time with like thinking about like all the things that I do well. I think the thing that I do hold on to the most, that I'm like most proud of myself for, is just my drive. Like I said, I don't like stopping, and I'll do homework. Like I'm already a couple days ahead on homework, just because like I'm like, well, what do I do now? Like I'm gonna do my homework. So, yeah, I think that's really helped me throughout my life, and it's going to continue to help me. So,
That's good. That's good. I would 100% agree with that. I'd also add that you're just a really good people person, and you just kind of bring a very good energy. I think sometimes in different workplaces and stuff, it's tough to sometimes feel, again, what we talked about earlier, like the motivation to pick up the phone and do what you need to do that day.
That's, I mean, again, it kind of comes back to your goals, right? Like you said, it can be hard to pick up the phone in a sales job. In my other job at Progression, it was hard just showing up to work, right? Because you knew that once you were at work, you were going to be on the phones for 3 hours. And so, like, keeping your eye on your goals will almost always, like, if your goals are defined enough, it will give you the motivation. The reason I say defined enough is because if I say I want to be a millionaire in 5 years, right? If I say that, that's really cool, but I'm not emotionally attached to that goal at all, right? If I say I want to do this and this and this, and I want to do this in 5 years, and here's how I'm going to get there. Like, if I clearly define my goals and put more detail into it, it becomes that much more real, right? Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, you think of like any author writing a book.
Yeah.
You want to have a clearly defined character so there can be some kind of attachment to his goal and him going after things.
Yeah.
They have to have like different weaknesses and stuff like that, as well as like, really strong powers and also backstory and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. If we take the time to really think out our goals, make a roadmap, put all of that effort into it, then it's going to be more real, and it's going to give us that motivation we need. So,
I agree. That's good. That's worth replaying, re-listening to defining your goals. Yeah, I think definitely need to hear that. So let's kind of go back to like one of your most spectacular failures that just taught you something about just life and what you needed to know. I like to call these just dumpster fires, where it's just like you see things so clearly, but you also set a dumpster on fire. So it just like, and that's not my thing, but I like to look at it that way.
Like, is this like things that we fell short on and then learned from, or like, is that kind of what you're asking for?
Yeah, kind of like what comes to mind with that.
Okay, probably the first thing that comes to mind is my first couple semesters of college. Just overall, my first couple semesters. First of all, I was studying something that like I wasn't really that passionate about. Like I thought I was passionate about computer science, but it wasn't until I got into marketing that I really found out what I was passionate about. So first of all, that was my first error there. But also, I found out that my teachers weren't taking attendance, and I stopped coming to class.
Oh.
I did all my work, did all my tests and everything like that, and like my grades, obviously they suffered. Since then, I've actually been able to get my GPA back up where I want it and everything, but I learned a lot from that just because it's the difference between showing up and actually showing up, right? I lived in Rexburg at BYU Idaho, but I wasn't really at BYU Idaho, if that makes sense, right? I could have been doing exactly what I was doing from Washington. So I think, yeah, that's something that I learned from that. Is just there's a difference between being present and being like actually engaged, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make is to just kind of be double-minded or like just half-visioned with different things. And, yeah.
And I think, like my intentions were great. I was working, I was going to school, I was like doing all this cool stuff. But ultimately, I realized that, hey, I'm not doing as well as I want at any of these things. And so I had to take a couple semesters, sit back, realign my priorities, establish my goals, that kind of thing. And then I went back in and I was able to do it. But like, I really had to like plan it out, think about it. Yeah, that kind of thing.
That's good. Yeah, I think, I was talking with you about this earlier before we even jumped on the podcast. Like, I feel like I need to do some real maintenance work just to kind of, fine tune some of the things that maybe are close to flying off or something like that. Yeah.
I think it's necessary at some point for all of us. And the key is after we take that time, because like I said, I've had to take that time. I think everyone's had to take that time. After you finish, like after you're back at it, just make sure that you're balancing yourself out in a way that like you can keep going after you do that.
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier. I feel like sometimes it's sort of like a seesaw. If you just put way too much weight, like it's almost impossible to like do anything.
Yeah. Yep. That's completely true. You always have to keep your life in balance with the workload, the family, the other responsibilities you have, the playtime, like all of that needs to be in balance.
Yeah. How has the gym helped you to maintain like some semblance of balance?
Yeah. The gym, like gym time is my time. I'm doing all the other stuff, obviously for myself. I want to get the experience, but ultimately I'm doing them for myself in the future, right? I want to be able to do that stuff so that I can get a job after I graduate, that kind of thing. The gym, that's like that's where I'm in the zone. That's my recharging place. So all of us need to recharge, and that's just like how I have found that I can do that best. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's really important just to have something to kind of plug in the power and give yourself. Yeah.
Whether that's running, going to the gym, writing, reading, whatever it is, like all of us need it. Otherwise, you'll just burn out like that. So.
Yeah. What would you say is like some of the most things that are motivating to you? Is it like when somebody shares a story of how they did something? Is it when you kind of like have something like click in your brain, or what kind of inspires you?
I think stories definitely speak to people. We can see that in like advertising, marketing. Like sometimes I hear stories and I just start geeking out because like the marketing is so strong. But yeah, whenever I hear stories, um, they really stick with me. And that's when I go to the gym. I'm listening to podcasts, and when I hear a story on the podcast, like I immediately start thinking about how that applies to my life. I think about like uh, what I can do to utilize the lessons learned from that story in my life. So
Yeah, I think that's really powerful, and that's something I really enjoy about marketing and just writing in general is just how you can, write down different things and position it a certain way so it
yeah,
just grabs the audience
yep,
and just puts them in there. Yeah.
yeah, and it's the same thing with with sales, with marketing, with anything business really. Stories sell like they just do. So yeah.
That's good. What did you say is probably like one of the biggest things that's helped you in sales? Just have a consistent pipeline, just overall excitement.
hmm Um, I am very much a numbers person. When it comes to sales, when it comes to like other things I've done, like numbers are a big motivator for me, and so we're tracking like contacts mined and things like that now. And like when I see that number go up, like that motivates me to keep it going up. Like when I see it shoot down from 1 month to the next, even if it's just by 10 people, like
Mm-hmm.
I start cranking. So I think that's it. It's just like I have high expectations for myself, and I want to continue to grow those expectations every month.
I like that. I really like how your expectations for yourself aren't like out of alignment with your goals.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Yeah.
doesn't lead to you getting super lopsided like we talked about
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah. I think there's a lot to be said for people that have high goals, but there's even more to be said about people that have high calculated goals for where they want to get in the long run.
No, yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's good. So let's talk about like where do you want Nick to be in the next like 5 years? What advice do you want him to follow?
I'd say probably work hard, um, or remember your priorities. Yeah, that'd probably be the advice I give myself.
That's good. Yeah, I think it's really easy to let those get out of the way because of something that excites you, like a number or something
Yeah.
like that. You're
Yep.
like, okay, if I work a little bit harder today, even if I have to sacrifice the gym, I know you'd never sacrifice the gym, but like some people probably would, and so it's like maybe I can bring that number up, and that's true. But the thing is, you're probably not gonna be able to do that sustainably,
Yeah.
and you have to be sustainable.
Yeah. If I were to give myself one more piece of advice, it'd probably be don't be afraid to try something new. Um, just because I've noticed in my jobs, I've noticed um, in my experiences, everything like that, even when I just slightly tilt like how I approach something or the method that I use or something like that, when I'm willing to try something new, the worst that can happen is I go back to the original way. But the best that can happen is I discover a better way of doing whatever I was doing. So,
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Just yeah, when I look back at my life thus far, I more am like, and we all know this is true. It's just the fact like you think more of like the things you didn't do rather than things you did do.
yeah.
Like different risks and stuff.
Yep. Yeah. I'd rather regret doing something than live and think about what could have been.
Well, if you just like, I just think of like you're on your deathbed or something, and you like literally have no more time. You've
Yeah.
used all your skill points for whatever, and just yeah, it's a
Yeah.
haunting thing. You really just
Yeah.
don't know how much time you have left.
So, whether I'm on my deathbed tomorrow or in, 80 years, probably not, definitely not 80 years, but like 70 years or whatever. I want to know that I put my best effort into everything I did, and I want to know that I didn't leave any opportunities unapproached.
Unapproached. That's good. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Nick. Is there anything else you wanted to share with the listeners about just moving forward in college, starting businesses, anything like that?
Not that I can think of. I think a lot of the time when we think about that kind of thing, starting college, starting a new side hustle, that kind of thing, we just get afraid of like the time commitment. We get afraid of, what if it doesn't work? You never know if it's not going to work unless you try it. And if you try it and it works, hey, there's some like good opportunities for learning, advancement there, that kind of thing. If it doesn't work, maybe your next one will. So I think don't hesitate to try. Would be my advice.
Underestimating yourself is like the worst thing you could possibly do.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yep.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, definitely check out Nick's content on LinkedIn. He's be coming out with some video content soon and just some other good stuff. And we'll look forward to chatting with you again in the future, Nick. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Sweet. Yeah, I thought that was solid. Talked about like calculated goals and